Right, Jonathan Trager here for Seconds Out. I'm joined by Eddie Hearn. First of all, Eddie, how are we doing today?
Very good, mate. Good to be back in Manchester. It's raining, which wasn't the biggest surprise, but it's good to finally get this announced, and I thank Darley's Perez for coming over. It's a long way, and looking forward to November the 21st.
Absolutely, yeah. Just obviously I've not seen you for a while, so just catching up on sort of general boxing issues. First question about Carl Froch. I've not seen you since he officially announced his retirement. There's always an undercurrent of that teasing factor that he might come back under the right circumstance. Do you think there is a scenario whereby you could be called one day with an offer and you could tempt Carl to fight again?
Joe Calzaghe, that's about it. No, I think that Carl will always be a competitor. I don't think that'll ever leave him, and I think if he's going to come back, it'll be to fight Golovkin. And I can't see any other fights because, he earned so much money at the Wembley fight that all these other fights that have been discussed aren't even half of what he earned at Wembley. And the Golovkin fight is probably the only fight that could reach those kind of revenue levels for Carl. So, and, people say, oh, doesn't he want to fight? It's not. You don't fight for free, and you don't fight for, you fight for money. And I know that might dishearten some fans, but of course you fight for belts and legacy, but he's got all them. Do you know what I mean? So what else? Why would he want to fight Golovkin? The reasons are for a load of money, and because he's sick enough to do it, and that's about it. So I think that's the only fight that could do the numbers needed to tempt him back. But at 38, he's not getting any younger. So there comes a point where the only thing I would say is that, because of his love for fitness and keeping himself in nick, he's under 13 stone. So, he's never going to blow up to 14, 15 stone. So he'll always be fit and ready, but it's whether he's got the desire to fight again.
So the fact that you're even mentioning that sort of leads me to believe that maybe behind closed doors there must be conversations you've had with him whereby you've said, is there anything a situation that could arise whereby he would come back?
Yeah, the thing is that all those fights were there for him. De Gale, Chavez, Golovkin, and there wasn't the fire to take them. So is there going to be the fight in 6 months? Well, yeah, unlikely. I mean, that fire should slowly burn out now, really, but you never know.
But presumably, like you say, the revenue that would have to take place maybe at Nottingham Forest ground.
I think it would be in America. I think you got Golovkin having his first fight on pay-per-view now, and I always said that if that fight was dual pay-per-view, it can happen. The numbers now are fine for me and for Carl, but it's just the desire, and what have you got to prove by fighting Golovkin, other than that you're a lunatic, But he's the kind of guy that might go, no, I'll do it, It's not belts, it's not, I suppose there's a little bit of legacy, but he's done pretty well, It's not like he's got anything to prove.
What's your hunch? If you were to have a stake on it, if you had to have a bet on it, what's your hunch?
I think no. I think he's done, yeah.
Okay, so obviously in Carl's absence now, we're looking for the next superstar. Now you've talked about the kind of pay-per-view being the holy grail, but we're looking for that next superstar now to emerge, and there's a few kind of front runners, obviously Kell, Anthony Joshua. Just touching on Anthony, what kind of safety precautions are you going to put in place when these guys come together for press conferences face to face to kind of avoid the Derek Chisora, David Hay kind of fracas?
It is a problem. I'm hoping that both guys will be sensible enough and realise that kind of action can make the fight not happen. We've got obviously very respectable broadcasters involved and sponsors, and they've got a code of conduct to follow. It's going to be heated and it's going to be nasty, but that's also the reason we sold 16,000 tickets in 6 hours. And without that kind of animosity, fights don't sell. So we've just got to be smart. I'll talk to both guys before the press conference. I don't think we'll have a press conference until probably the week after the Klitschko-Fury fight, just because I think it just sits well. So yeah, just be smart, And I told these guys it's a game, but it's not. It's personal. So, and it's they've clashed twice already We haven't even had a press conference yet. They were just bumping into each other or seeing each other. So, it's, you know, we've got to be careful.
But I suppose it's all very well you kind of advising them to remain composed, but obviously in the moment, in heat of the moment,
It's like that, you know, just like that, it can all, you know, and it's going to be bad for the fight, and it's going to be bad for the sport.
so presumably until the day of the weigh-in, you maybe not even allow them to do a proper face-to-face, or certainly there'll be security in between them.
I think. I know.
It's combustible.
Yeah, I know. You know, it's easy for me to say I'm going to talk to them, but you know, I think I do use that approach quite a lot. You know, and on things like before the head-to-head, I might just talk to both of them that morning at the press conference and say, listen, I'm going to do a head-to-head, but you've got to behave. And the amount of times I've done head-to-heads and I've said under my breath, lads, nothing silly, and that's how it'll be. Right, head-to-head, boys. Right, nothing silly. We've got 5 seconds left. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Right, everybody step. And then, of course, they won't step away. So then I'll be in the middle. But it's quite easy for me to do that with a couple of lightweights. With 6'7", like absolute brick houses. Once it all goes off, you're in a whirlwind and you can't separate it. I can't anyway.
Because ordinarily it's just yourself in between, but obviously you have got security dotted around. But on this occasion, are you going to potentially have security nearby?
Yeah, definitely, very, very near, very near.
But there's not going to be that scenario where with the Hay Chisora, it was quite a visual sight as well, where they had that gate in between them. It's not quite that bad.
It's been done now, but you know, it's a good way of making sure nothing kicks off.
Absolutely. Moving on to Kell. The other week I saw an interview with Tyson, and he kind of joked that he's spreading the love because his name suffices to sell this pay-per-view on it by himself, you know, almost that Kell is the cherry on top. Can I ask you honestly, what kind of percentage do you think that Kell brings to this pay-per-view? Or let me rephrase that. How well would it sell without Kell? Is Kell just the cherry on top here?
I think with heavyweight boxing, and with that fight particularly, you just don't know what's going to happen. You know, we saw with David Haye, who was one of the best heavyweights in the world, he fought Vladimir Klitschko. It was an absolute stinker, and it nearly killed pay-per-view. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to give value for money across the board. So, you know, Kell Brook is pay-per-view fighter in the right fights, and Fury Klitschko is a heavyweight championship of the world. That's the main event. You know, it's not. There's no pretense that it's the Kell Brook show. It's not. It is the Fury Klitschko show, but you know, it enables the financial model makes sense for everybody. It means that we're going to do more sales, you know, than we would do if it was just Klitschko Fury. We're going to be providing a good card from Sheffield with, in my opinion, a great main event, and then we're going to be going over to Germany for the heavyweight championship of the world. So the main event is Klitschko Fury, but Kell brings a lot to the table, and with my deal with Sky, we had to be involved. So, you know, and I think it wasn't a case of, you got to do it through me. It was a case of sitting down and realising that for everybody this made sense. For Sky, it means delivering more value for money across the pay-per-view. For Klitschko Fury, it can enable them to have a more solid product and actually do some more buys. And for us, it helped us get in on the act and the revenues to make sure that Kell Brook against Chavez can happen and that we can keep these great fighters in the UK.
Yeah. I suppose I haven't looked at it like that, as a safety net, like you say, in case the Fury Klitschko is a stinker.
That could be one round. I mean, it's heavyweight boxing, you know. So what happens if that was the only thing and all you've got chief support is Rod Stewart? Do you know what I mean? So all of a sudden you've got Rod Stewart singing, one round it's all over, and then you're back to where you started. Oh, here we go, you know, pay-per-view, or now you can start at 6 o'clock, have some great fights from Sheffield. You know, almost by the time you leave Sheffield, you might say, I've already got value for money. This is just a bonus. You know?
But just truthfully, because obviously Fury Klitschko is anticipated, what extra percentage of pay-per-views do you think Kell brings? If you're just being completely honest, aside from obviously the making sense for you, do you think an extra 10% buy it because of the Kell, or primarily?
More. I think more because, I mean, don't rule out the Matchroom involvement in pushing the pay-per-view. You know, we've got the ear of the public as well. They believe in our products. Kell Brook is the best welterweight in the world, in my opinion. Now Floyd's retired, and people want to get value for money. If it was just Brook Chavez from Sheffield with a good undercard, we'd do a couple of 100,000 buys. just. So, and I expect Klitschko Fury to have done 500,000 buys on its own. So there you go. I mean, yeah, 6, 7, something like that. That's what I think it'll do. So I just think it works for everyone. I mean, you know, we went through the dynamics and the numbers for a long time to do the deal, and I think we found the level where everybody gets what they're worth.
And there's no way Floyd is retired on 49, is there?
But he's formally announced. So therefore, Kell Brook's the best welterweight in the world, in my opinion. Because I've always said it, and even with Floyd, I believe Kell Brook can beat Floyd. Don't get me wrong. But now he's out of the way, supposedly. I will now say Kell Brook is the best welterweight in the world.
And your hunch on that one as well, if and when he does return, we all suspect that he will. Do you think that is Kell in that sweepstakes to maybe get that 50th fight?
Yeah, I think by the time he returns, he might be. Not at the moment. You know, he's got to go out and do a good job on Chavez. We need a really big fight in February or March. Bradley is the fight we want. If he beats Tim Bradley, then all of a sudden, bang, you know, he's right in there.
And just a quick, curious one for myself. I interviewed Barry Jones recently. We were talking about British boxing generally, and I don't know how it arose, this topic, but he was sort of saying that obviously whilst you and Frank Warren are different people, that you've got a lot of similarities in a way. He was sort of discussing in terms of being businessmen and stuff like that. How do you respond to that? Because I know that you and Frank have well, certainly on his behalf, had your differences. I know you, more publicly, you've said that you're quite okay with everything. How do you respond to that? Do you understand where Barry was coming from with that statement?
I think a lot of decisions that are made in boxing become common sense, but only once you understand the business. Probably a lot of decisions we make are, you know, from the same train of thought. But I think, you know, I saw the interview with Barry Jones, and you know, I don't believe we're the same people at all. But you know, no disrespect to Frank Warren, but when probably 2 years ago, I was actively thinking a lot about what they were doing or what they were going to do next. I can't remember the last time where I actually even thought about what they were going to do next, or you know. So I just really get on with our own business. You know, you've got to worry about your own business and yourself before you start worrying about other people, and we've got a lot of work to do. You know, I think we've done a great job for British boxing, but there's still a lot of work to do. So, you know, going back to Barry's comments, I think some of what he said was correct in that we will make similar decisions on certain things because over a period of time, once you've been in the sport, that becomes common sense.
And just a quick one regards to the kind of Al Haymon scenario. I think maybe to the outside perspective, they almost view it as poaching. I know that you would say obviously they've come along and sort of poached, handpicked a couple of fighters. Can you just explain it to everyone in terms of, because you said obviously you have slightly less influence now, you're still involved in the decision-making process. Does it also, presumably it also affects your earnings on the fighter when they presumably have more dealings with him?
Not necessarily. Sometimes it can be more financially beneficial because you may have a fighter that you have to pay a large purse that doesn't necessarily, I'd say deserve, but in terms of the financial model, deserve that purse. By which account you will make no money on that fighter. So now you get in a position where, you know, the fighter goes to America for a much bigger purse, where you might be involved in taking a percentage from the fighter, you might be in a percentage of taking the UK television. So financially it can be more beneficial for me to do this model. Where there's a pay-per-view fighter, I would say it's less financially beneficial for me. But I've never been, and this may be where the previous question comes in, I can't sit there and honestly talk to a fighter and say, you'll get 200 grand by fighting on the show, but there's 400 available for you over there in the same fight. Do you know what I mean? So, and that, as soon as you make them do that, that's when the relationship's going to end. Because it's just like having a footballer at a football club. Once they've put in a transfer request, or once they don't want to be a part of that club anymore, relationship's over. You're never going to get the same player. You're never going to get the same fighter. So for some fighters it makes sense. For some it doesn't. You know, for the likes of, someone who's got pure pay-per-view potential in this country, Kell Brook. I mean, Joshua's a good example. Anthony Joshua is going to earn millions and millions and millions of pounds on Sky box office.
Yeah.
And he's got it in the palm of his hand. So he doesn't need... And you can't achieve the kind of purses in America that you can here when you're in the pay-per-view model. When you're not, you can achieve much more in America. Right. Do you know what I mean? So it's case by case on everything. In terms of our involvement, it is quite strange because, you know, Lee Selby's a good example.
Yes.
Where, you know, I was involved in who he was fighting in terms of, I was told and we discussed it. Yeah. And then I'll go out there, I watch the fight, I'm co-promoting but not really on the ground, do you know what I mean? So it's not as if my team are there putting on this press conference, this is that. I'll be there, I'll watch the show.
Will it have Matchroom branding?
Yeah. I mean, the fight's in association with Matchroom. We're co-promoters of the show. So, but I'm not really big on that. Like, that doesn't, you know, some promoters, that's so important that they've got your names read out by the MC. You know, it doesn't really bother me, but it will be quite strange sort of turning up. My main priority is to ensure that I can deliver the best fighters, UK fighters, for my broadcaster. So as long as they remain on Sky, I'm happy. And that's the case for Lee Selby, and that's the case for James DeGale. So, you know, I think...
But you're not worried about... I mean, obviously, like you say, you wouldn't want to begrudge a fighter. You wouldn't want to misadvise him if he's better off being in America in terms of making money. But is there an element of you where, not you lament it, but does it upset you a slight bit, maybe that there is a slight loss of control with certain fighters, or do you just view it pragmatically in terms of a business decision? And the second part of that is, presumably then Anthony Joshua, like you were saying before, there's no real risk of him defecting over to America, really.
No, and... You know, I think Anthony Joshua's got the pay-per-view model in the palm of his hand and, you know, he's in a great position. But I think everything's case by case. And, you know, people say to me, oh, are you happy about that? And the answer is, yeah, I'm fine with it. I mean, I'm not shouting from the rooftops. Of course, I'd love these guys to be boxing over here. Yeah. But until we grow boxing to a level where the rights fees are available to pay them the purses. And by the way, who knows how long that model in America will last? Yeah. It's heavily financed. And it's a very, very... I mean, I like what they're doing, but it's a very, very risky model. Yeah. Could be 6 months, could be a year, could be 10 years. We don't know. Yeah. But there is that element of risk as well. You're diving into sort of almost the unknown. Yeah. But while it's there, you're never going to stop a fighter from wanting to take more money, especially when they get to a level of, in their career, like go back to Selby again, great example. You know, it's almost like a no-brainer for him because... He can be in those big fights over there. If we do the Warrington fight over here, he'd come back and take that. But, you know, Selby's from Barry. He's got one arena anywhere near him that holds 4,000. Yeah. You know, if there was a 10,000 arena in Barry, I don't believe you'd see him boxing in America. Yeah. But there isn't, so you got to, you know, and it's nothing new. Everybody wants as much money as possible.
And has it brought your relationship with Al Haymon closer? Are you in constant dialogue with him?
Yeah, I talk to. I mean, Al's, you know, a little bit difficult to get hold of, but in terms of his team, I would say I speak to his team minimum of once a day, probably more like 2 or 3 times a day. I mean, we've made so many fights, you know, and there's other fighters that I'm trying to get to sign with Al. Jamie McDonnell is a good example. Yeah. You know. There is no point Jamie McDonnell fighting in the UK when he can earn what he can in America. Yeah. He's at that stage in his career, he might have 3, 4, 5 fights left. He says to me, get me as much money as you can. I don't care where it is, just get me a pot of money. That's my instruction from Jamie McDonnell. Right. So the answer is, you've had 2 great performances in America, let's go back out there. Other guys it doesn't really work for, so we won't. But when the model works, I'll be making them that move, you know. Yeah. So I'm happy with it, and you know, I won't make one decision that isn't right for us from a business perspective. Yeah. So the fact that this is happening, you can be sure that it's working out for us. So, and it's working out for the fighters. So everybody wins.
And just last one on obviously this card here now. I believe, was it about 10 or 11,000 were in the arena for the last fight? Obviously now with the extra press from this fight, the fact that he was, shall we say, it was unjustly given the loss on this fight. Basically, How many would you anticipate coming now, bearing in mind obviously that Scott isn't there to sort of supplement the card as well?
It's going to be interesting. I would probably say about the same. I mean, you're going to expect a much bigger anticipation because of the first fight. You haven't quite got the story that you had last time, which was kid stops burglars. You know, that story's over. But you had Quigg Martinez, and people say, "Oh, Quigg doesn't sell tickets." Trust me, Quigg sells tickets, especially in that fight. So you know, I mean, we've already done a couple of thousand. That was the first report from the box office in the but you always get a massive start. Crolla will do 3,000 on his own. So I expect 12, 13,000, something like that. But you know, it's there's going to be. I think you'll see a different kind of fight as well. I think both guys will take more chances.
You sort of hinted at something with Quigg in the latest Coogan interview. I don't know if you can elaborate on that, or is it still all very much?
I mean, there's a lot of talk about the Donaire fight, and the Donaire fight is a brilliant fight for Scott Quigg. But of course, we've got other things on our mind with Frampton, and I don't want to jump into a Donaire fight when I really feel like this Frampton fight can get made. So, you know, and the Donaire fight's a really tough fight, by the way. So it's not like we're going to just take this Donaire fight and we'll fight you after. Donaire fight's an all or nothing fight as well. So it's kind of like one or the other. And listen, it might be a decision we regret. Maybe he'll end up fighting Donaire in March or April. But it feels like it's close enough that we shouldn't dive into a Donaire fight until we get the next couple of weeks out of the way and see how close it is.
So presumably there has been some sort of progress made then behind the scenes with that.
Yeah,
for you to even contemplate.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you know, Frampton, you know, and his team, they seem to want the fight, and of course we're desperate for the fight. So we're gonna meet up this week and just try and iron it out. And you know, like I said in an interview, you're talking about a couple of % split. You know, it's not like, and you almost want to get them both together and just say, guys, come on, yeah.
Where are we up to then? Because obviously originally it was the 60-40 to the winner. There was the 1.5 offered outright to him. When you say a couple of %, how do the specifics work?
We went back and said, look, as well as 60-40 to the winner, 50-50 or 1.5 million, we'll move and we'll go 55-45.
Right.
And you know, they said no, 60-40, but that's what they've always said. Right. So I just feel like, you know, and I'm not going to start slating the camp because it's not going to help. So, and they know how I feel anyway. So, but I've made now 4 offers, and I'm the one putting the money up for the fight. Yeah. So it's just a case of sitting down and say, just give me a little bit, because you know you're dealing with egos here. Yeah. Not just me, not just Barry McGuigan, but Carl Frampton and Scott Quigg. Yeah. They don't want to give an inch either way. Yeah. So Scott has done, and now I just want to go to Carl and say, just give me a little edge, and it's done. Yeah. It's that easy, you know. Yeah. And it might just be one day when they turn around and go, go on then. And then we're there. And it's a fight that everyone can get so excited about, you know.
Absolutely, we're all hoping it happens, obviously. I heard the car salesman analogy as well. Quite an extensive one with Coogan last week.
I'm trying to sort of put it into perspective. It's like, and that's where ego and stubbornness comes in terms of everybody wants to feel like they've got a fair deal. Yeah. And that's not me. I don't mind. I mean, but the fighters particularly. Yeah. So we just have to try and get the dynamics right where everyone's happy and everyone feels like, and it'll happen like that. Yeah. Just like when you buy a car. You know, finally he says that number and you go, done. Yeah. And you walk away, you're buzzing, you got your new motor. Do you know what I mean? And that's the same with them. Where all of a sudden, I go back to Scott and say, Scott, I managed to move him to this. And he goes, done. And then Carl goes, yeah, I'm happy because I've got what I got. You know, and everyone, you know. Yeah. But at the moment it's like, what? No, why do I have to move all the time? Yeah. What's he doing to compromise? And it's, you know.
Last question. Tony Bellew. Obviously, we know he's in inverted commas a Hollywood star now. Yeah. Is first of all, I can't imagine that he has changed at all. I reckon he's still probably equally down to earth. But is there always the fear with someone like that if he gets any more fairly lucrative offers, film offers, that his sort of desire to box might diminish a little bit?
I thought that, but he wants to fight, you know, and the fact that you've seen him fighting in 8-rounders, and you know, he wants to fight as much as possible. So it looks like he's got a big part in that film. You know, the IBF route is becoming a right mess. I mean, Hernandez against Ramirez. They've stripped Hernandez, and now Ramirez is there, wants to defend on October the 2nd and pay an opponent peanuts. I think actually they're going to fight Oval Mackenzie out there. Yeah, in Argentina. That's the word. Yeah. But I mean, we want to fight Ramirez after that. So, but Tony wants to fight. You know, that's his #1 priority. But you are right. You know, after this fight, after the film, you know, he might get another offer. It's a lot easier than getting punched on the chin.
Well, that's it as well. Yeah. Right. Eddie, appreciate the time. Good catching up.
Cheers, Jonathan.